Oak. She is the original founder of Camp Soft Landing and the Tea House. This is her 22nd consecutive burn, humongous achievement, and she's here to speak to us about radical resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to this beautiful afternoon here at Camp Soft Landing. I want to talk today about what I consider to be the 12th principle here on the playa, and that's radical resilience. I want to talk about how to build resilience into Burning Man camps, large art projects, your life, your community, and the thinking that goes into creating art around us. I'm very interested in this topic because I've been going to the burn every year since 1996. I keep trying to skip a burn, but the burn won't let me do that, evidently. And I consider Burning Man to be our academy. This is the place where we learn essential skills and learn essential lessons. And it's certainly been that kind of place for me. And so everything I do, every piece of art I make, every decision that I come to, I try to build in the idea of radical resilience. How do you design for the long haul? How do you create resilience within your art? And so that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to solicit from you some suggestions for your vision of radical resilience in the art you make, in the communities you lead, and in your own life. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to tell you a story because it's late in the afternoon, it's story time. And I want to tell a story about this camp that we're sitting in right now. This is Camp Soft Landing. I founded this camp 7 years ago with some friends. This camp used to be a bar camp called Above the Limit. And it was one of many bar camps here on the playa. There are many bars out there on the playa. They pop up, they go away. There's some long-term bars out here, but they tend to have a life cycle, bar camps. So when I first came to the playa in 1996, I was a journalist. I was covering the technology out here at Burning Man. And I quickly decided that that was ridiculous. I didn't want to work out here. I wanted to participate. I wanted to be a participant. I wanted to create something. I wanted to be an artist. Because this is a community for artists to co-create together. So I very quickly stopped being a journalist and I volunteered for a succession of newspapers out here that were published by the Burning Man organization. And I became their in-house police reporter, which was super fun, because I'm very interested in how the organization interacts with law enforcement out here. And so I used to put on my little bikini and ride to law enforcement camp and try to figure out how many people had been arrested that day and cited. And, you know, were they arraigning people here on the playa? Were they bringing them into Reno? What was going on? And I learned a whole lot about how the organization, the Burning Man organization, was negotiating with law enforcement here on the playa, and how people who had interactions with law enforcement were trying to negotiate those interactions. And that was very instructive. And then a couple years later, I ended up publishing basically a police blotter out here so that people could support their own resilience by learning their own rights and knowing how to have successful interactions with law enforcement. And a couple years after that, I volunteered for a crew headed by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, who were forming a group that worked inside the sanctuary space at Center Camp run by the Rangers to provide psychedelic support and care. And we volunteered there, and then there was some disagreements between MAPS and the Rangers, and they left that space, but we learned a great deal doing that, about how to support ourselves and other people here on the playa. And the Rangers gave us a choice. You could either become a ranger or stop working in that capacity. So I became a ranger for several years and worked with the Green Dot Rangers out here, assisting people and helping them build their own resilience for the transformative experiences, which are sometimes difficult and challenging out here. So after being a ranger for a few years, I decided that I had learned a great deal through all these experiences. And I really wanted to take what I had learned and create an art project. And I wanted to create an art project that was resilient, that was replicable, that was built on open source concepts. How many people here are familiar with the concept of open source software, open source culture? People understand what that means? That means creating something in a way that can be replicated and given away to other people. So I wanted to create a large-scale art project, and I wanted to build into that art project from the ground up the concept of resilience, freely giving away information, and replicability. And I also wanted to build into that art project what I think is important for every piece of art, every relationship, every experience that you have in your life, and that's the idea of an exit strategy. Everything needs an exit strategy. Death is our final exit strategy. Nature takes care of that for us. In between birth and that moment, we need to build into all of our art projects exit strategies that allow us to replicate what we know, pass along that knowledge, exit out of what we've been doing, and then move on to the next transformative experience. So that's what I want to focus on today. How can we build art and community that has an exit strategy, that is replicable, that passes along what you know, and that is built for sustainability? So this camp that we're in, Soft Landing, was a bar camp about 7 years ago. It was called Above the Limit, which is a DUI term. And it was a big raging bar. It was a big raging camp. It was about 250 people. It wasn't really that different from a lot of big raging bar camps here on the playa. And the guy who ran it was busy. He was running the air service that serves Burning Man. And he is a ranger and still out here, bless his soul. But he had too much on his hands and couldn't really run a big, raging, large bar camp. And so I made a proposal to him. I said, let's reimagine your large, raging bar camp in a more sustainable model and relaunch it. And he said, okay, go for it. I said, great. So we took this large 200-person bar camp and reimagined it in a more sustainable model, and I rechristened it Soft Landing, and we got rid of the bar. Because I think that alcohol is an inferior drug, especially out here in the desert, and I don't want to serve it to the people I love. There's plenty of it. There are tons of bars out here. There are 5 bars on this block, right? But there weren't a lot of spaces where people could go and be social and sit down and have deep and meaningful conversations and take a nap and get out of the sun and drink something aside from alcohol. So I proposed that we relaunch this bar camp and create a tea house. I called it the Full Circle Tea House. And we created a beautiful tea house space where people could go and take a nap and have a cup of tea and hang out with their friends and maybe come in altered and lie down and be supported in that space by a loving, wise community of people. And that tea house is next door. Full Circle Tea House. And I invite you to go and have a cup of tea and lie down and enjoy that space. So, took over the camp, relaunched it, started the tea house, got rid of the bar. That was 7 years ago. And the camp is still here. The tea house is now run by a whole group of wonderful volunteers who keep it running 24/7 for 2 weeks. The camp here, Camp Soft Landing, is here to support the tea house and the Palenque Norte space, which is our partner. Thank you, Frank. Beautiful space that we should give thanks for. So how did we design the camp and the tea house for radical sustainability? Well, the first thing that we did when we took over the camp and got rid of the bar is I tried to imagine how to create a space for the tea house that was cheap and easy to build and could be replicated easily by other people. So I decided to build it out of easy to purchase car barns. If you go next door, you see the tea house is made out of 10 by 20 car barns that you can buy off of Amazon and have delivered to your doorstep. They're super cheap, they're easy to put up in bad weather with a small group of people and no heavy equipment. I wanted to build a camp that didn't rely on any heavy equipment. Radical sustainability. And I wanted to build a social system that didn't require any heavy equipment. I wanted to create something that could be easily and cheaply replicated elsewhere. So we bought a bunch of car barns and started getting donations of all of those beautiful oriental rugs in there. We now own about 40 of them. And we started acquiring pillows and tea gear, and we created a modified version of Kung Fu Chinese tea service, which our lovely tea server has been doing over here. Can we give some thanks to the tea server? Thank you. So we created a model that could be replicated elsewhere. My organizational theory of Burning Man is that this is practice for when we're displaced people. This is practice for when we're in a refugee camp, when we are displaced due to climate change, due to political turbulence, due to some forces in our lives. The number of people who've been displaced in this world who are now living in refugee camps is the highest it's ever been in recorded history right now. And what we learn out here in terms of replicable, sustainable systems should be shared with others and created in a sustainable way so that we can share that with the world. I think that Burning Man succeeds because it's a model of shared adversity. We go out here, there are very few opportunities for people who live in the urban world to test themselves against the elements stronger than themselves, to create systems to sustain a community, to sustain themselves in a really harsh environment. It's a completely unique gathering in that regard. Most festivals, you buy your ticket, you go in through the gate, you have your experience. Out here, you have to plan for what happened during our build week, 4 days of whiteout. The build crew that built this camp built it in 4 days of whiteout conditions coming in this week. So you have to have this shared experience of adversity, and you have to build that into your collective experience. And what we learn from that are lessons in sustainability that we can offer to the world and offer to our own community when we're displaced people, which may well happen in our lifetimes. It will happen. I believe this is the lesson that we get from Burning Man. So going back to our camp, we created a tea house made of easy to acquire, cheap materials, donated squish and rugs, and we set out to create a tea service system that was easy to learn, easy to train people to do, that allowed them to pour their own creativity into the process and make it their own, which is absolutely essential for sustainable design. It has to be an open enough design that people can put their own stamp on it and make it their own, or else they don't feel engaged with it. If it's too structured or too much about you or your own vision or your own ego, it doesn't work as a sustainable model because people won't pick it up and run with it. It's also true for the camp. We took a bar camp of about 200 people, we shrank it down to about 80 people, and we rebuilt it on a distributed leadership model. This camp is a really well-run camp. In my humble opinion, I think this is one of the best-run camps on the playa. We have no drama. We have very lightweight infrastructure that we can take out into the middle of the desert and have up at Playa, north of here, the north part of the playa. During Playa, if you don't know what that is, that's the 4th of July celebration, which is like a free-form Burning Man. We've taken this entire camp and the tea house with no infrastructure out there to the top of the playa and recreated this camp as a test to see how well we've designed it as a social and physical system that can be replicated elsewhere with no porta potties and no gate and no law enforcement and no rangers. We do it ourselves, and we tested this camp out. This is our desert camp. So we have a couple of things that we built into the camp for sustainability that we've also built into the tea house. We have a camp mayor, a camp leader who helps place people as they come into camp. But we have a mayor of the day. We let people learn how to be leaders in this camp because we want to set up a system of sustainability where we pass this camp on to other people. We have to train people how to be leaders within our own community, test out this system, to improve on it, and then to move on and create a new version of this camp. So we have a mayor of the day, we have a placement team, we have a build team that comes in and builds this infrastructure. And I ran this camp for 5 years, and then 2 years ago we executed a succession plan. Remember what I said about an exit strategy for every piece of art? We built a succession plan into this camp so that I, as camp leader, could pass along this camp to another generation of leaders, many of whom had been mayor of the day and invested and involved in running this camp so that they could pick it up and run this camp. And I could go off and do other kinds of art and continue to evolve myself and do other things. So 2 years ago, we did a camp handoff, and we handed this camp over to a new generation of leaders, which for me is the full realization of an art project. It's not just what you create, it's how you create for sustainable infrastructure that you can pass on knowledge to keep it going, and allow people to invest their own ideas into something. We're about to pass this camp off to a third generation of leaders, probably next year. And so it will be a test, a second generation test of how to pass along this knowledge to a new group of leaders. Will we do it? I don't know. It's the ultimate test of our art project. Have we built in enough sustainability in order to do that? And the same is true of the tea house. The tea house is now run by a beautiful crew of volunteers who are scheduling those tea servers next door 24/7. Who are getting up at 5 in the morning, bless their souls, out here and serving tea at 6 a.m. We do 6-hour shifts around the clock. You want to volunteer for this tea service, you can do that. We figured out how to train people really quickly to allow them to put their own stamp on the tea service and to pass off that project. Because in being able to create sustainable systems that you can pass off, you yourself can go on to create other forms of sustainable art. Artists never want to sit still. They always want to create new pieces of art, right? But if you can't pass off the art you've already created, it's hard to build on what you've already done in order to evolve other art. So let me give you an example of how this passing along of art through a sustainable system has allowed us, and me in particular, to create other art. So about 5 years ago, I took a long walk on the playa that was assisted by some entheogens that put us in an expansive and creative state, which I think is a very useful place to create art. And I took this walk on the playa with a friend of mine who was then running the Palenque Norte speaker series before Frank ran this, and another friend of mine who was running a very large tea house camp on the other side of the playa. And we took this walk out on the playa. We took time away from the running of our art projects, from the running of our camps, from our engagement, to take a long walk out into deep playa and to think. I think part of what I love about the playa is the engagement with the land. It gives you the opportunity to do this, to go way out into the unknown, to the trash fence, to the edge of the city, maybe in an expanded place with people that you want to co-create with and create a bit of magic. And that's what we did. So we got out way to the edge of the playa, to the trash fence, and we're like, we're all running large camps. We're all running large art projects. And we think we're doing a pretty good job. People are having a really good time. And we think we've built in a pretty sustainable model. We think we can pass off those projects to other people. What do we want to do next with this knowledge? And we realized that if we're running large theme camps out here, we knew everything we needed to know about building infrastructure, running crews, creating art, creating experience to run our own events. And we decided that we were going to step away from these immediate art projects that we had created, and we were going to form a production company. To take what we had learned out here on the playa, which has been our academy, and create immersive, visionary art events out in the default world. And we were going to take the things that we knew, really loved about the playa experience with us on that journey, and it was going to be like 5.0 for us. And we're going to leave some things behind that we felt didn't serve us in that journey. So in that long walk on the playa, we created a production company called Take 3 Presents 5 years ago. And we decided on some radically sustainable organizing principles for that production company. And these principles for me were non-negotiable. I said to these two guys, here are my non-negotiable demands for creating a new art project based on what I had learned in this camp, creating the tea house. And here are my demands for going forward, to create new art that is sustainable. One of them, central demand, was that we not serve or sell alcohol to the people that we love. And this is a huge thing because the entire production and entertainment industry is based on the alcohol model. You make money on your bar, right? So we had to create a new business model, a new sustainable business model that did not depend on the sale of alcohol. We're not going to sell an inferior drug to the people that we loved and make it the basis of our business model. This was a non-negotiable demand. I was running a tea house. This was my art. And so we decided that for this production company and all the events that we were going to do in the default world, we were going to make the tea house the central organizing principle instead of a bar. And that has set the tone, I think, for those events in a profound way. It's created more of a container, a safer container for people to have transformative experiences with other substances. And it has changed the vibrational tone of those events that we've now been producing for 5 years, and it is built entirely on a sustainable model that was tested out here for 5 years, next door. So that was my non-negotiable demand number one, for a sustainable model, for the next piece of art I wanted to create. Another non-negotiable demand is that none of the events that we do for this production company were going to be promoted or discussed on social media. And this was a pretty radical idea, especially since my two partners are both millennials and live their entire lives on Facebook. I'm not a millennial. I come from an outlaw culture where we would never in a million years tell the world who we were with, where we were going, and what we were doing. Why would you do that? It's self-surveillance. We're in a web of trust. We're not sharing that information with the world so that we can support our fellow outlaws in our community and give people a zone of privacy to have transformative experiences around us. So I personally find living one's life on Facebook completely antithetical to that. And yet here we are in a world where many people do live their lives in public on Facebook and other social media. So I said one of my non-negotiable demands was that we were going to create events, create an entire community, create art, invite artists to work with us, and never promote the event publicly on Facebook, live our lives out loud on Facebook or social media, and solve conflict in social media. Because social media is a hot medium. It's not a good medium, really, to resolve conflict and to co-create community. On the surface, yes, but no. It's an advertising platform run by a large rapacious company that lies to Congress and is harvesting our personal data for their personal gain. There, I've said it. So we decided that we're not going to publicly promote our events on social media. We're going to run it on a more sustainable model that has been used by sex parties in the sex community for many, many, many years. And that model is that you have to sponsor people to join the community. I consider myself a social engineer, and this is a form of sustainable social engineering that I think is really effective. If you're going to have a private party, let's call it a sex party, or whatever kind of party, and you can only be invited by being sponsored by somebody who is already going to that party. People who are coming to that party are going to be on their best behavior, right? They're going to be accountable to you because they don't want to make you look bad. And you are only going to choose people who you know are going to respect the values of your community, right? Or else you won't invite them. So we adopted this model for our parties, which are not sex parties, but which use this form of sustainable social engineering to make people accountable to their communities. So if somebody comes to our party, they need a sponsor. And I can pull up on my phone at these parties who sponsored who. For these parties are now 1,500 people. And we could tell from our list who at this party is sponsored by whom, and if we have an issue with somebody at the party, we can go to their sponsor. And we can say, hey, you invited this person, you're responsible for them, we're having an issue with them, help us out. It's a system of community accountability, and it's worked out really well, actually. It's helped us to grow organically. It's a sustainable model for community development. Collective accountability to your friends. What a radical idea. And we have very few issues with people at our events. And I should know because I run safety and security for these events. I took what I knew, what I learned as a ranger, what I learned as a journalist, what I learned running a tea house, and I poured that into running safety and security for these events. And this system of collective accountability is central to that. Building for a sustainable community. Some other things that we do at this event, at the events that we create, we now do 2 events a year. We used to do 3 events a year for several years. Do 2 events. You can't find them on social media. We don't promote them. They're private, obviously. We always build into those events a system for risk reduction. This is part of radical resilience. What we built into the tea house was a system of risk reduction. By reducing and removing the alcohol from our art, we reduce all the risks that are well documented with alcohol. By giving people a place to rest, we reduce the risk of people getting too exhausted and not having a place to sleep and renew themselves. But we also build in other kinds of radical sustainability and radical risk reduction into our events that I think should be a benchmark for other people designing events. For example, at our events we run an internal ranger crew based on what I learned as a ranger out here. And we recruit calm, kind, centered people to serve on our ranger crew. We don't contract out our security to other people. We develop it internally because we're developing for long-term resilience. If you contract out your internal security in a community, you don't learn how to do that. And very honestly, you exclude a lot of women. Because outside security companies tend to be heavily men. But you really want, for building sustainability, to include people of all genders in your internal security for your events. It's absolutely essential as a system of long-term resilience. So we run our own internal security. We poach shamelessly from the Black Rock Rangers, from people who are known to us for having those qualities of being calm and kind, can think on their feet, can de-escalate, can resolve conflict really quickly. We build that capability internally in our community. Absolutely essential. Another non-negotiable demand that I have is that our events always be multi-generational. There is nothing more boring than going to a party where everyone's the same age. How boring is that? You are not actively building in resilience in your community that's allowing people to pass on what they know. This is an essential element of tribal living, that you have elders that keep the young hotheads in check. You've got the wise women over here who are taking care of people. You've got the wise men here who are part of the elder council. They're passing on knowledge actively. You're building that essential tribal element into your sustainable community. So this camp, the tea house, the events that we produce for Take 3, we do everything we can to make them multi-generational experiences. We recruit people's parents to come join us for these experiences. We recruit elders from our community to join us for these experiences. And we create ways for them to pass along their knowledge. It's an essential part of resilient design. Because without doing that, the young people are always reinventing the wheel. They're making the same mistakes over and over and over again that the elders have already figured out. That's not sustainable design, right? It's inefficient. And a lot of art projects, production companies, concepts don't do that. They don't build a way in for that knowledge to be passed along and replicated. So we try to do that. And by creating this sustainable system of wise people, they can handle any sort of craziness that happens at our events. And by building that as part of the design of the events, we can do some things for risk reduction that a lot of other people don't do at their events. Let me give you an example. At our events, we provide on-demand, free, no questions asked drug testing for anyone's substance. This was pioneered by a group called Boom in Portugal, and I want to give them big props for really raising the bar. We're doing this on a mass scale for a huge festival in Portugal. They brought in very sophisticated testing equipment, gas chromatograph testing, and they allowed people to test the substances that they were about to ingest to make sure that they weren't about to inadvertently poison themselves with adulterated materials, with fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid that has been now showing up into the street drug supply, into cannabis, into Xanax, into cocaine, to MDMA, even onto blotter. So there are systems that have been pioneered by groups like Dance Safe, which allow people to learn how to use commercially available reagent testing kits available on Amazon to test their substances before they ingest them. We do this at our events. We allow people to test what they're about to ingest so that they don't inadvertently overdose and poison themselves. What a concept. The reason that a lot of other event producers don't do this is because of liability. They're afraid of being sued. I think for me, this is the next piece of my own art, is to deeply investigate sustainable forms of liability and protecting ourselves from legal liability to allow ourselves to create truly resilient and radical risk reduction strategies such as free on-demand drug testing at all events. I would love to be able to do it here in the tea house. That would make me very happy. We're not quite there yet. We're thinking through the process of how to navigate legal liability and do that. And that's a really central and important question, I think, for evolving the design of communities. We live in a litigious world. When somebody dies at an event, it's their family and their grief and confusion who lashes out at the event producers, the people running that camp, at the people running medical services, and everyone gets sued. Lawyers get involved. You've got to spend tons of money on your own lawyers figuring out what to do next. So building an idea of sustainable, resilient, number one, sustain yourself. The first rule of triage is to take care of the people who are taking care of other people. Take care of yourself. Figure out how to radically sustain yourself. Build a practice of self-care, whatever that is. I had a long night last night out there on the playa. Boy, was that fun. Got up, took a shower, drank some coffee, ate some food, listened to Dr. Nautilus give an amazing talk. I'm ready. I've got my system of self-care. I'm ready to hit it again for another night, serve tea, rage around the playa. Number two, cultivate a community of trusted friends that you can turn to for advice and support. This seems obvious, but this is really important. Create a community of people who can give you the advice and support that you need to be the best person you are, to create art. Cultivate good friends. Identify people who you admire. Say, please be my friend, be my ally. Let's co-create together and have some fun. Number three, have a spiritual practice in which you can call on your allies, your ancestors, your guardian angels, whoever those allies are to help you out. We live in a multi-dimensional, enchanted world. Learn how to check into that enchanted world and ask for help from your unseen allies. You're going to need that help. Number four, identify some simple, high-nutrition meals and superfoods that you can shop for quickly in any supermarket in the world, anywhere. You need to learn how to sustain yourself. Good nutrition keeps you going. What are the four things, if you're whisking through a supermarket, that you can reliably buy anywhere, that you can eat, that can keep you going? This is an important skill for resilience. Number five, make a consistent plan for exercise and engagement with the outdoors, and especially the wilderness. We're renewed by the land. I consider myself a green witch. I get my energy from the land and from connection to the natural world. I'm a yogi. I practice a form of personal, sustainable exercise. I'm a backpacker. I'm a high elevation explorer. I go outside. I renew myself outdoors in the wilderness as often as I can. I highly, highly encourage you to do that. It's deep wisdom. Number six, be mindful of how you use substances and your patterns of substance use, especially alcohol and stimulants. Take a step back. How are you using those substances? Is your substance use helping you create better art, better connections to your community, better relationships? And if not, reconsider your use of that substance. Is it really serving you? Think about that. Number 7. This was important to me at about 9 o'clock this morning. Learn how to get yourself to sleep. You need to learn how to soothe yourself, how to settle yourself down, how to get some sleep when you've been out there raging around the playa all night, like I was last night, with your friends. Gosh, was that fun. Oh, my word, it was so fun. And then the sun's coming up, and maybe you're not quite down from your experience. You need to learn how to get yourself to sleep in the heat of the day. Sleep is the ultimate renewal. Find tricks for doing that, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, create a quiet, cool space where you can get sleep. 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep will restore you to a resilient place where you can keep going, especially out here. I make sleep a big priority, very big priority in my life. Make it so for yourself. Number 8 is connected with this. Figure out how to pace yourself and conserve energy. Watch animals. Animals don't waste energy doing anything, because evolution has taught them that energy is a finite resource. As you get older, you realize this. When you're young, you're raging out there and you think your energy is infinite because you feel superhuman. As you get older, you realize energy is a finite resource. It's your most important and precious finite resource. And you need to be able to pace yourself, to conserve energy, to know what you need to spend energy on and what you shouldn't spend energy on. And make those decisions wisely. For creating art, for creating community, for being in relationships, how do you want to spend that energy? Think about that carefully. Number 9, learn how to forgive your parents. Just do it. It takes a lot of energy to be angry at your parents. Huge amounts of energy. Let it go. They're human. They did their best. Don't be angry at them. Don't tie up your own energy by being angry at them. And try not to be angry at other people. Learn how to resolve conflict. It's a really important skill for sustainability and reliability in yourself. Try to do that. We're all human, we're not perfect, but we need to learn how to do that. Start with parents and go out from there. The most challenging thing I do as an event producer is dealing with conflict in our community. We figured it out here in camp. We have 7 sub-camps within this large camp. Each sub-camp has a leader. If anybody has an issue in our camp, they go to their camp leader, and the camp leaders get together once a day and they sort out any conflict. It's very efficient. It's a distributed system. We're not an official village because it's too much paperwork, thank you very much. We try to do light-scale infrastructure. But we have a distributed system for distributing and resolving conflict. We do the same things at our events that we produce with Take 3. We have a mediation team. We have rangers. We figure out protocols for resolving conflict. Our largest problem in resolving conflict is dealing with sexual assault. And we have protocols to deal with that. And we share those protocols with other communities. It's hard, it's really hard, it's a hard problem. And we try to get better at it for each event that we do. It's very difficult to be compassionate, mindful, and respectful to everybody. Learn how to do that, it's really important. Number 10, learn how to take care of small injuries and emotional turbulence before they become big things. Take care of small things. In high altitude backpacking, you learn this. Don't let that cut on your finger go. Take care of it now before it becomes a bigger injury. Same with emotional injuries. Take care of it now. Don't let it escalate. It takes too much energy. Number 12, learn how to live well on very little money. You're going to go through times in your life when you're flush, when you're not so flush. Doesn't matter. Learn how to live simply and well with little money so that you don't wake up every morning worrying about how much money you have. Learn how to create in a way that's cheap and replicable, just like building our tea house out of cheap car barns. Learn how to do it inexpensively. Because if you do it inexpensively with as little infrastructure as you can get away with, it's more easily replicable for other people. They don't need a lot of money to start their own tea house, to build their own camp. We started our production company bootstrapping it. We have no investors. We each threw in a couple $1,000s. Sustainable models. Number 13, learn how to pack quick essentials for a safe day trip or a one-way permanent journey out of your house. I live in an earthquake zone in San Francisco. I have a little farm on the front range of the Sierra Nevada that's in a wildfire zone. I have a bag outside my door with my quick essentials. If I need to get up and leave my house, I have everything in that bag that I need to leave and take care of myself. If I think it's a really dire emergency, I'll grab my passport. People do this all over the world. Something happens, cataclysm. They have 10 minutes to leave their house, for whatever reason. People with guns outside the door, tsunami, earthquake, something's happening. Have a bag ready, have your jump bag ready to go, with essentials, water, food, medical essentials. You're ready to leave your home. People have grabbed their bag, left their homes, and never seen their homes again, never seen their countries again. A lot of our ancestors had to do this, coming to this country. Learn how to do that. Pack a bag. You're ready to leave at a moment's notice. Number 14, learn how to ask for help gracefully. Learn how to ask for help. And with that, learn how to deal with rejection. Learn how to receive rejection. Learn how to gracefully say no. Thank you, I love you, but no. And in that exchange, learn how to sustain yourself. Learn how to ask for help gracefully and receive it in a humble way. So I'm not doing the best I could do here. Help me out. Give me a reality check. Be my ally. Help me out. And number 15 is learn how to grow old gracefully. Unless you die young and beautiful, which some of us do, you're going to grow old. And you need a sustainable plan for doing that. Your own personal plan for resilience. I'm headed for 120. I'm 57. I'm not even halfway there yet. So I'm designing my own system for radical longevity, radical sustainability, and radical resilience. So there are my 15 points. Thank you. I'm going to stop talking now, and with the time we have remaining, we started a little late, so please let me know. 10. Thank you, Frank. Conserving energy here. I'd like to ask you what your suggestions are for radical sustainability in your lives, in your art projects, and in your communities. How do you do it? And I'm going to take notes. And if you have a suggestion for me, you can reach me at Annie. I'm Annie Oak, no, not here in the playa, as Vesper. What does Vesper mean in Latin? Who took Latin? What? Well, sort of. The Catholic Church calls their prayers in the evening Vespers, because Vesper in Latin means evening. So I'm Vesper out here on the playa. I prefer to be out in the evening. I sleep during the day, or I serve tea during the day, and I go out at night. It's a more sustainable and resilient plan for me. Stay out of the sun. So, but I'm Annie, A-N-N-I-E, at Take3, T-A-K-E, numeral 3, presents, that's plural.com. If you have a suggestion for me about your plans for radical resilience, I would like to know them, because I will build them back into our systems, my personal systems, this camp, the tea house, our productions. So I'm going to open up the floor and ask you for your ideas. Radical resilience and sustainability. Who has something they'd like to share? Yes, sir. Can I play Oprah? Oh, great. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks. Great talk. Big fan. I've been to a couple of Take 3 events. One event minus one. I ran like a chill space, and it was nice to have chill space.
Great.
One thing that I both really appreciate about such events, and I wonder about how you deal with editorial on this, and so my sustainability suggestion or question or exploration, let's say, is kind of on the editorial side, is about like memetics for people who are like highly altered. Because there's like so much creativity, and I've talked to some of your collaborators and sort of started to understand like what are their thought processes about like what they want to do with the events, what kind of experiences they want to create as a process. And some of those are, this is my personal experience, some of them are like radically expansive in ways that like resonated with me, and so that felt good. And others were sort of like challenging, and I could feel that like if I was in a vulnerable space, that like some of these challenging things might be like really hard to deal with. And so how does the sort of resiliency and challenge balance itself out? As an editorial question, as you say, like this art is going to happen, this art is not going to happen. I have some of my own thoughts about that, but they're kind of just biased based on my context. So it's kind of, I'm turning it back around as a question, let's see, a suggestion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for co-creating art with us. This man is one of hundreds of artists that we work with on our productions, Take 3 Presents. We work with a whole community of artists. Every one of our parties has a story, has a narrative that we express. We create a whole stage show around it on Saturday night, and then we invite artists like this lovely gentleman to co-create with us and send us proposals for art projects that plug into that narrative. And as you point out, some of those art projects are really challenging. We're creating a safe container that allows people to go far out to the edge of transformative experience through art, through whatever substance they're using, through other forms of art in itself as an expanded state of consciousness, right? So we have art rules. Even as artists, we need to create boundaries around our art, and we have a series of art rules that artists must follow. Setting boundaries is an essential skill for resilience. Kids want boundaries. Anyone out here have children? They want boundaries they can push against, so you have to give artists boundaries. We have art rules. And when we ask for artists to collaborate with us, we say, here are the rules. Artists, play by them. If you don't play by them, we'll shut down your art piece. We're not a collaborative model, we're a hierarchical model. Work with us. So for example, we ask people if they're going to create a form of super erotic art, for example, sexually charged art. You always have women involved in that art, for example. We want people of all genders, just women, people of all genders involved in erotic art to make it less objectifying, to make it more respectful, to make it more engaging. And we work with people who create erotic art to create that safe, respectful place to not objectify, to respect, but to bring people to the edge of a transformative experience. We also run our own version of the sanctuary, or the Zendo, inside of our events. We call it the Cozy. We shamelessly recruit people who are Zendo volunteers, who are sanctuary volunteers, and we say, work with us. We're creating a new version of what we do in our quiet space. We call it the Cozy. The people have intense experiences with the art. They know that they can come into the Cozy space and be supported by people who have training through the Zendo, through the Rangers, through other supportive training. The thing that we do differently in our Cozy is that we recruit elders very specifically to sit with people in our space. So if they get too expanded, they get too troubled by an experience with the art, they can sit with an elder, with a wise person in the cozy, and be supported through that experience. And we have a whole bunch of other art rules. We don't let people run bars in their art, for example. You can't serve alcohol as part of your art. So we set boundaries. And we recruit elders to be part of our experience. Yes?
When you started your, just, when you started to speak your list of like resilience, when you first put out the question, when you started, the first thing that came to my mind was something that like some friends of mine that are like special forces military stuff. They talk about making yourself comfortable in the uncomfortable. Some of your 15 points spoke to that somewhat, but that's more kind of somewhat refined. I think there's this one question I had about your take 3. I've participated in one before. They're really fantastic. I love the inclusive kind of element where you kind of include the whole group. I've only been to one. It's kind of far. I live in southern Arizona, but really fantastic. What's your exit strategy for that project?
That's an awesome question. I've thought about that a lot recently. What's my exit strategy for take 3? It occupies a lot of my brain space. Because every relationship needs an exit strategy, right? My exit strategy for take 3, training people to do what I do. Training people to run safety and security, to create the safe container. Say, here's how I do it. I know you have some really great ideas. Help us out, become a ranger, become an understudy. Always be training the people who will be replacing you. And especially training people to deal with conflict. That's hard. Working with people who can really, really get into and deal with conflict is really difficult because it's the least fun thing you do. How do you work with people who have violated a community agreement, who have assaulted somebody, who disrespected somebody, or violated your community agreement? How do you remain compassionate to their journey and also just say, no, you can't come to our events anymore, I'm sorry. We wish you well. Please get some help. We'll help you get some help. We have a black budget at Take 3 for providing counseling to people who've been assaulted at our events. People get assaulted at events all the time. Almost always, no one's held accountable for that assault, and the people who are assaulted don't receive any support after that event. We try to do that, but we try to provide support best we can, not just for the victims, but for the people who have violated community agreements. We try to be compassionate human beings. The point I'm making is that learning how to deal with conflict is the hardest part. I want to train an understudy to do just that. It's the hardest part of what I do. I want to train people to do what I do so that in a couple of years I can say, I'm out. I'm out. I'll be a partner in the company. I have fiduciary responsibilities as a member of the corporation. We're an LLC. But you do my job. I'm going to be over here creating new art. I'm an artist. I want to create new art all the time. I don't want to sit still. All art is referential. It builds on other art. So I want to train the person who will come behind me. We should all be doing that. Right? Another question? Yes, back here.
Great download. Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you.
Several comments. The first is, because we live in a litigious society, as a large-scale event producer, at a certain point, I got an umbrella insurance policy on my own personal assets, which provides several $1 million worth of additional coverage in case, even if you run a great event, something happens and somebody's parents or somebody sues, the insurance companies all sue when there's an injury. So an umbrella policy, and anybody who has a homeowner's policy can get an umbrella policy for additional coverage. The other thing is, especially if you are finding yourself creating events that are large and that many people really, really love, Recognize that your ego is very likely to get addicted to all of the backslapping and hugs that you get, and that there's a chance that you will become addicted to the positive feedback, and that it will become difficult for you to move away when it is appropriate time for yourself to let go of the project and move on. So recognize that the ego is a good tool for building the event, but it can also get you addicted to doing it for too long. And
Thank you. Please continue. I just want to give some big props over here to Johnny Dork, who's been producing magical events for many years and knows a thing or two about resilience and sustainability. Your point about an umbrella insurance policy is a really good one. And I've been pursuing that myself to protect myself, my assets, and so on. Thank you. That's a really wise piece of advice. Yes, please.
One more. I too practice spending time in nature as a way to calm my nervous system down for the intense work that it takes to do events. But what I found is that if you're in nature and your mind is racing at human environment speed, you're not getting the benefit to your nervous system that you need. And so, as an example, I choose, instead of automatically watering my garden, I hand water my garden because it forces me to slow down for an hour a day and really be on nature's energetic level. Instead of being in nature and having my head run around with the production thoughts while I'm hiking and actually miss the actual nervous system settling that nature can give you, that is the thing we need if we're going to have an intense production job.
Thank you. That's a really deep piece of wisdom. Slow yourself down. Be on a natural time schedule with the earth, with plants. Watering is a great way to do that. We live in a really fast-paced society. We're all wound up all the time with a 24-hour news cycle, right? Learn how to slow yourself down. I think that's a really wise piece of information. Thank you. Also, your point about ego is really important. It's, as you point out, it takes a certain amount of ego to create art. You've got to say, I have an idea, I'm an artist, I'm going to execute, I'm going to convince people to go on this journey with me. But it also keeps you sometimes from letting go, from taking that step back and going, okay, I'm out, I'm done. I'm not going to get so attached to all the things that my ego gets from being an event producer. I'm going to say, okay, I've learned that lesson, thank you very much, all the backslapping, all the atta-girls, you know, let it go. Let it go. Very wise thought. And you've got more. Great.
It's been very common that when people love the events that you produce, they'll come over, they'll give you a hug, and that perpetuates the whole feeding of the ego, which is actually important to keep you going in the game. But at a certain point, what I started to do was, when people would come over and hug me at the end of an event, I would consciously ask that energy, that only as much energy I needed to be healthy would stay in me from that thank you, and that the rest would actually go down into the earth so that it wouldn't build up in me as a charge that I would get addicted to.
Very, very good piece of advice. Set energetic boundaries. People come at you with their energy. You need to know how to set your boundary, and as you say, if they're hugging you, what do you do with that energy? Take as much as you need. Be grateful for that hug, for that transfer of energy. Give the rest of it back down into the earth. Direct it. And if people come at you with energy that's in crisis, they're in crisis. They're looking for your energy. They want a piece of your energy to help them stabilize themselves through a crisis. All exchanges are energetic exchanges. Learn how to set your energetic boundary. Give as much energy as you can to that person to help them through that crisis, and then keep the rest in check. Keep that energetic boundary up. Don't give it all away, or else you don't have enough to create the next creation and to act on the first rule of triage, which is to take care of yourself. It's a very good piece of advice. Thank you. Learn how to set your energetic boundary. Give away as much energy as you wish, and no more. Other suggestions? Our time is running short. No more? I want to thank you all for your time and attention today. This has been really beautiful. And I'm really grateful for your presence and for your wisdom. Please get back in touch with me, Annie at take3presents.com, if you have more suggestions that I can incorporate, reflect on, and then share with the world. Thank you.